cloud. Okay, hello everybody. You are in Inner Outer Space Harmony, a class that is basically based on the work of Rudolf Laban, and it's dealing with geometric space. And I have made a bunch of items which I am going to show you. One is this, what is this? It's a very inapproximate thing. I spent some time with cardboard this morning, but it's very uneven level of the planes. Oh, there's Krista, Kiki's coming in. So this is one thing, and I'll sort of explain what these things are. This is the other item. I made a cube, and then of course we have our icosahedron, and we can see how the icosahedron can fit inside the cube. This is just my huge nerd level, and then also showing how these shapes, like on a body level, work together. So there's a body in the cube. Here's a body in an octahedron. And this is a icosahedron. And right here, I don't know if you can see it, but that shape is the planes put together, which if we stick them inside of an icosahedron, it is the inner scaffolding of the icosahedron. And we're going to move that. So the stuff that I'm going to bring you today is actually fairly advanced, but I always feel like if we can sort of put things in our bodies, then the chances to conceptualize them in our mind, like it doesn't always have to go that I understand everything here and then it moves into my body. It can go, oh, my body is starting to feel this stuff. Now it can move into my conceptual thinking. So it's like this, the thinking of concept moving between the body and the mind, which really are one expression of the same thing. There's no separation. So we are going to move all of those things. And hey, Lindsay, hey, Christine, Kiki, we've got a lot to happen today. So I want to start. With the basic scale, the up, down, side, side, forward, backward. Just so we underpin the structure of what we're going to do. And because most of you have been here before, we're going to go right into it. And if you feel like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? You can sit and watch also if you feel like it's just too confusing, but I have a feeling that it's going to make sense. Inshallah, God willing. So I'm going to go up, place high, and down, place low. That's the vertical. Then I'm going to cross. This is my hand. That's the dominant, crossing over and opening out. That's the horizontal. And then backwards and forwards, sagittal. So same hand again, going up to place high, which you can't see if I back up, place high, and then down, place low, vertical, coming into center, same hand and foot crossing over and opening out, horizontal dimension, and then coming into the sagittal dimension, backwards and forwards. So these are sort of the pure dimensions in movement, up, down, side, side, back, forward. Of course, we are three-dimensional creatures, so this is just language to use for describing movement. It's not like, oh, I'm one-dimensional, you're three-dimensional no matter what. This movement is three-dimensional no matter what. But for Laban, we would say that this is the vertical dimension, up and down. We're still on the same side, crossing and opening, horizontal, backwards and forwards, sagittal. And if we look at developmental patterning, just to layer one more thing, if this is all brand new to you, don't worry about remembering any of it. But in the patterning, upper versus lower, one of the first organized patterns babies learn is upper versus lower, push-pull patterning. So it kind of makes sense in the scale. We have our upper versus lower first. It's one of the first movement patterns of organized body work that the babies are learning when they're on their bellies, usually pushing and pulling, upper versus lower. Then the next pattern they learn is sort of right versus left when they start to roll. So the second pattern here is also horizontal, side across, side open. Then for babies, the next pattern is going to be contralateral cross-body movement. And here, I'm not doing contralateral, but maybe there's some tension within that of moving forward and backward. Let's switch it to the other side. Upper versus lower, vertical, high, place low, vertical dimension, side across, side open, horizontal, backwards, and forwards, sagittal. Again, place high, place low, vertical dimension, side across, side open, horizontal dimension, backwards, back middle, forward middle, sagittal dimension. Excuse me, third time. Up, down, vertical, side across, side open, horizontal, backwards, and forwards, sagittal. So we're just going to play with this, maybe with our eyes closed, but we're going to take it into a more internal sensation. So from there, let's just imagine within ourselves the upness of our body, feeling the roof, feeling the crown of our head, feeling the top of our body. And then imagining the bottom of our body, feeling our feet on the floor. And then you can just bend your knees or reach your arms up, but just finding within your body without going too outer. I mean, you can be outer in your movement, but try to stay inner in your sensation. So you're not looking really, but you're feeling what this up and downness is. Upper versus lower, vertical dimension. Just finding that up and down in whatever way is interesting in your body. And then finding your side-sideness. And you can do this with eyes closed or eyes open. It doesn't have to be the side across, side open, but just finding one side and then the other, feeling what that feels like to move in that. It might be small movement. I'm doing big movement so that you can actually see what I'm doing. And I'm rippling through the two sides, but finding that horizontal dimension. And then the sagittal, forward, backward. Let's just start it by just rocking to the front of your foot and then rocking to the back. So you're just moving forward, moving back, rocking through, feeling your weight shifting to the front and the back. So finding the sagittal with this movement. And then we can start to step forward or step back, taking it forward and backward, feeling your feet coming forward, coming back, maybe taking a minute to actually play with the other people on the screen in your forward backwardness, or play with me if you've got, but just feeling like the reach into space and backwards, finding sagittal in your body, forwards and backwards, and feeling the difference. What does it feel like to go forward? What does it feel like to go back? Maybe slowing it down. Let's do some slow motion, taking your time to move forward, taking your time. Maybe moving different parts of your body backward. So I can move my back backward, my arms forward, or I can move my arms backward and my chest forward. And I can play with forward and backward with different types of tensions in my body, different types of, I can just do my rib cage moving forward, moving backward, or my rib cage up, down, or side, side, right? I can do any body part with that. So just landing in that three-dimensionality that's basically within the octahedron, up, down, side, side, forward, backward. And just a quick repetition is the way to learn this stuff. Layering and repetition and coming into it with new sensations. So here's this picture of, it's actually Anthony's painting, but there's a person inside of this like shape. But if you look at this part of the shape, you can see kind of side, side, up, down. So we've got the side, side, and the up, down of that diamond shape. If I show that to you on this piece of paper that we looked earlier, there's the up, down, side, side. And this one, we've got a front point, and then behind that would be a back point. So this is an octahedron, and I'm going to show you a small one. There's an octahedron. This is the basic inner scaffolding of the scale that we just did. So in the scale, we moved up, down. From this point to this point is side, side. The back point to the front point is sagittal. Let me show it to you with a different colored octahedron. So that's the most basic scale of movement. It's the three dimensions put together. Here's another picture of it. And this picture has the motif writing for what those places look like. So in Laban, we could write this little tiny rectangle that's colored in. Oh, wait a minute. I have it upside down. I'm like, that's weird. That's low. So yeah, the colored in one is, that's awesome, is placed low. And I'm like, low, and the little rectangle with the lines run through is high. We have right side and left side on the two sides. And then forward and backward are like a little rectangle with a divot on it. And there's a dot in the middle that tells you it's in the middle space. That's why the triangles also have a dot in the middle. And whether or not you remember any of this, it doesn't, it's just more conceptual thinking and more ways of going, oh, here we are. Now, remember this thing I showed you? So I'm just going to talk about this really quickly. If I take the vertical dimension, let's do it this way. Okay, here's my vertical. Here's my up, down. And now, no, this is right. Here's my up, down. That's the vertical dimension. If I add side, side, I have the vertical plane. So this piece of paper is my vertical plane. If I take my horizontal, I have my side, side, and I add some forward, backward, I have my horizontal. So this is my horizontal plane right here, this piece of paper. And if I take my forward, backward, and I add some up, down, I have my sagittal. So in my body, it would be like this. There's the sagittal, forward, backward. That is the same as, let me make sure I get it the right way up. That's what happens when you get older and like my near vision isn't very good. So here's those spaces together, and that each one has a, each point has this little motif, this little symbol, which is what that point means. Now, if I take this thing and I've got just the outsides, each point, this is what I want to play with today, is like this point right here is my high right. This point right here is my high left, low right, low left, right? This point here, right forward middle in the horizontal, left forward middle, exactly, you got it, Peen, in the horizontal. In the back, right back middle, left back middle. Yeah, and then in the sagittal, which I'm just going to turn sideways. So this is my sagittal, my forward backward plane. Here's my forward high. Here's my forward low. This is my backward high, and this is my backward low. Now, if I took all of the points and I took out the scaffolding, what I would have is this shape. So this is my icosahedron, and that would be the inner, that's how the planes are inside the icosahedron. So here's my high right, here's my high left, here's my low right, here's my low left. And this is a ton of information, right? So if this is blowing your mind, just be like, okay, it's okay if I just kind of get some idea about this. Here's my horizontal plane, right forward middle, right back middle, left forward middle, left back middle. And then here in front, these 2 points in the front, forward high, forward low, backward high, backward low. So where did you buy this structure? This structure, I think I got it at a garage sale. Everyone's like, where'd you get that? It's so great. This structure I made this morning in my kitchen with like, what are these things? Kebab sticks and tape. So here's a cube. I was like, I need better illustrations. So then I made this one as well. I was like, and it took me a while to figure it out. But when you start to figure it out by making these things, you're like, oh, okay. It starts to make a whole bunch more sense. And sometimes I need to, like, I'll be in the shower thinking, how do I want to illustrate today these triangles of, let's say, high right, right forward middle, and forward high. I want to find that triangle of that plane. So how am I going to, of the 3 planes put together? So I want to find that flat surface, and we're going to talk about these triangles. So we're just bringing space into a different thing than just the basic scales that Laban did, but ways of conceptualizing all that. Yeah, there are kits that you can buy, and I looked it up. I looked it up on Etsy. I looked it up on eBay, like all the different structures, and some of them I almost ordered one, but then I was like, it didn't happen. All right. So yeah. Teresa's got that picture of the dollhouse, which is kind of like, it's how we compartmentalize things, right? It's how we make, yeah. So you can see, I'm just going to spotlight her for 1 second. So this would be like looking inside of a cube. I'm spotlighting her, so hopefully it comes up on the thing. But there we have our square cube, and then we have like that square cube partitioned. Awesome. Yeah. And hold on. Okay. And then all of the shapes are just the way that we can move with inside of that. Okay. I'm going to unspotlight myself, but hopefully it stays. I just want to be able to see everyone. Okay. Now I'm in gallery view. Okay. So we're going to move the scale, the planes. And I'm just going to give you one more thing. I know a bunch of you have already done this, but I'm going to give you one more image of thinking about the planes. And that is, so this is like a plane, right? It's a 2-dimensional thing, a plane. We have, here's our vertical, here's our horizontal. If I put it here, here's my main horizontal, it's got a little bit of sagittal. And if in the sagittal, the primary pull is sagittal and the secondary pull is vertical, up, down. And so we want to think of them as these rectangles in the way that, because the rectangles are going to make up this shape when you put them on the inside. So each of these, like you can see, here's my vertical, this is a rectangle. I'm going to turn it so you see that this would be the horizontal. It's not a square, it's a rectangle. And my sagittal also, it's a rectangle. So that, and that kind of matches the way that our bodies can move in space. So let's come back in to to move these planes. So we're gonna hit high right, high left, low right, low left. So we're moving them with the two different sides of the body. So we're splitting high right, high left, just to think of the points, low right, low left. So that's our vertical plane. If I touch everything in the vertical plane, I'm here, it's the door plane. It's like I'm touching the high corners of the door and the low corners of the door. And then if I am going to go into my horizontal plane, I'm going to have, here's my horizontal plane. It's the table plane. And you want to think of it as a table with the two heads on each end. So it's kind of a long table, dominantly side, side, a little bit of front, back. So I have right, forward, middle, left, forward, middle. I'm hitting the corners of the table, right, back, middle, left, back, middle. Right, forward, middle, left, forward, middle, right, back, middle, left, back, middle, right. And you want to think of them kind of right out to your side. So the table isn't necessarily down here. I'm just looking at the way that you're doing it, Dawn, kind of down. And that changes the thing to being slightly lower, which is okay, but think of the, just for the way that our bodies are shaped, you could think that the table's kind of higher, it's up here, so that you're reaching out, or it's somewhere between your waist and your shoulder. And of course, this is all just an approximation anyway. Hey, Abby. So then we're going to go to the sagittal, forward, backward. So we have forward high, forward low, backward low, backward high. So we're just finding the points, forward high, forward low, backward low, backward high. And we want to think that this has got more forward backward than up down. So my forward high isn't going to be like just in front of me and straight up. It's going to be more forward than it is high, so that it's here and my backward low is there. So if I'm sideways, so you can see it that way, if I'm moving through these diagonals. So let's just go from one side of the body. Let's go forward high to back low. And then let's take it from back high to forward low. So same thing on that. Forward high to back low, back high to forward low. So we're kind of making like a infinity figure X inside of that. Let's do it with the other side. And let's just change it a little bit. So let's start forward low. We're going to go forward low to back high to back low to forward high. Forward low to back high, back low to forward high. Yeah, so we're thinking about how all of these things can shift around in our body and how we're sensing the space. Let's take this idea, so here's my vertical, my up down is here. This is my right high, left high, right forward middle, left forward middle. Just to conceptualize this shape of, if I put it here, if I use this, here's we're finding this surface. So that right high forward surface, which we're going to find the 3 points around it. So my 3 points are going to be right high, right forward middle to forward high, right high, right forward middle to forward high. If I do the same thing on the left, left high, left forward middle, forward high, left high in the vertical, left forward middle in the horizontal, forward high in the sagittal. So that's like a triangle of finding that space. If I were to take, I don't think I can actually shove this into my icosahedron. Well, yes, I can. I just did it. Awesome. So my icosahedron shape is now inside my cube. If I was to, hold on, there's a way, where there's a will, there's a way. And I want to show you this in a few more different iterations. And I've got all sorts of toys to help me do this. Although they're not going to move as well. But so here, if I take, and for some of you, it's like, oh, what the hell is this? That's fine, right? It's just, a lot of people have already been in this class a bunch, so it's conceptualizing space. If I take my icosahedron and I put it inside of my cube, my not very straight cube, this point up here is sort of the center of those points of high right, forward middle, or forward, high, sorry, high right, right forward middle to forward high. If that would radiate out into this point of the cube. So it's just another way of conceptualizing this. But I want to also show you as my thing falls apart, just to give you more of an idea of what movement in the cube is. Like, here's a person. This, everything of course is the same color. There's forward, there's left forward high. So now it's really three-dimensional movement in the cube. There's right forward high. There's that outside place. If I cross, ooh, it doesn't cross very well. But it's moving through these diagonals inside the cube. So this is going to make a little bit more sense to people who've already had some training in the theory, but this is what we want to think of as like our self inside of the thing, of the here's my little Norwegian doll that fits more nicely inside of the icosahedron. So it's like how we move within this space. Here are his vertical points, lower. Here are his horizontal points. Here are the sagittal points. I know, it's kind of ridiculous. So let's come in for a second and just discuss. And if you're noticing anything, or if this is a completely insane way of teaching this, which it might be, but I was just conceptualizing and thinking about that. And I was like, well, where did it go from here? Because we've done the axis, we've done the girdle. How are you guys, how are your brains? What's happening in the brain space? Yes, say it, Dawn.
I'm happy in my brain space. I love going back and forth from moving to conceptualizing, moving to conceptualizing. I find that really rich. And I always had a low horizontal plane. Really a new experience for me to think of it higher. And I like it. But I guess maybe someday, somewhere along the line, someone taught me that you're standing inside of a table or something, you know?
Well, that's what it is called, the table plane. But I feel like if my arm is down, you know, reaching down like that, then it looks like I'm reaching down. Like we want to think of horizontal, it's like the shape of the arm really in the horizontal plane. But having said that, it could be at different levels. And somewhere in here, I have a picture of a person inside with all the level changes as well. So you know what, if we want to say middle, if we really go perfect horizontal, it is going to be lower. It's going to be sort of more the middle of your body. So it's all like approximation, but because we're imperfect, right? Because each person's shaped slightly differently, but still the basic factors are like the geometry of the space itself doesn't change, just how we access it might be different from person to person. Anybody else? Lindsay.
So I haven't done much space, but we did shape before, and we used space to shape in. So to find corners, my head wants to go like ascending, advancing, and spreading, retreating, descending, and closing, and stuff like that. So, but it's good to find it in a pure way that you're teaching it. And I think it makes a little bit more sense than it did to me before. So this is excellent. And
So,
again, what Dawn said, like conceptual to movement to conceptual is great.
yeah, and actually what Lindsay is talking about in Laban movement analysis, and then I'm going to go to you, Peen. So in Laban movement analysis, there are 4 basic things that we're looking at. And one is the big S space, which is all the sort of geometric space and the scales of movement in space. Another one is the body level, and that's like the anatomy and like the rotation factor and the bones and the structures and like the weight shift, the ways that we're moving our body that are maybe more the sort of fitness and anatomical way of looking at the body. It could also be the dance way. And then there's shape, and you're talking about shape. And shape isn't just making a shape, it's how the shape is being made. So in shape, we have this thing called shape flow. And shape flow is like just the ways that your body is just adjusting and adapting within flow. It could be, if you look at a bunch of people standing in line and they kind of shift their weight and they do something and they move. It's also the breath support. It's the underlying support, flow support of being a human, of being alive, and the way that our body, in many ways, without consciousness, is just taking care of itself. It's doing what it needs to do. So that's the first layer of shape. Then the second layer of shape is called directional shape, and that's arc-like, or spoke-like movement. Like, so as I'm jabbing into you, or spoke-like. And so a lot of this movement in the scales is very spoke-like, or we could spoke and arc. So I could go in my vertical straight up, and then I can arc down. I could spoke across and then arc open. So that's another way of a very sort of 1 to 2 dimensional way of relating. The shape flow tends to be the internal support. The directional shape tends to be this other way, and it's kind of how we relate to the environment. So, and then the third one is shaping. And that is like the full 3-dimensional, like snowdrifty shape of bone, like really carving and connecting like a hug, a really complete way, as opposed to sort of a more linear way, which the spoke-like and arc-like, like if I'm going to shake your hand, my arm spokes out, it moves up and down, and that's like a complete directional way of relating. It's not quite as engaged as a shaping, which would be like, I'm going to hug you, I'm going to wrap myself around you, I'm going to do something in it. Yeah, you can see that Lindsay is down there in the corner shaping away. And there's language for that in the Laban system, like ascending and descending, which would be the same as rising and falling, or growing and shrinking, like these different ways of using language. And then the fourth one is effort. And so the effort, we talked about it in another class, is kind of like the spices you put into the movement. And effort aligns sort of with shape, with space and shape, with everything. So like we tend to, like in effort, we have lightweight and strong weight. And it's not how heavy you are weight, it's your attention to weightedness. So like lightweight has a tendency to move up, strong weight has a tendency to move down. But of course it could go in any other direction. It doesn't have to be that way. And then the effort, we have space effort, which is different than the geometric big space. Space effort is like how you attend to the space. So like very direct or very indirect, where you're taking in all the, like, so like a pinpointed viewpoint or a global viewpoint. And we could see that in movement, like boom, she looks straight over there. That's some direct space. Or kind of moving around, not sure, where's that person? Indirect space. We're still attending outward. And then there's, within effort, there's also flow effort, which is either bound flow, which is very contained and very controlled, very mature, and free flow, which is very childlike and uncontained and just unstoppable, moving. So, and then wait, time. So we have time, and when we look at time in time effort, we don't look at just it's fast or slow, we look at it's sped up or it's slowed down. So it's when time changes. And so when we move through, let's work with this a little bit, because it does affine with space. And a nice way to feel how time can change is just by cycling in the sagittal plane. So we're just gonna like take it forward and then up and then take it back and down. And you can take it forward and just see how the tempo of your body changes. Like it kind of speeds up and then it slows down, and then it speeds up and then it slows down. So in that movement, try it with the other side of your body, forward, up, back, down. And you're just cycling. So it doesn't matter if you hit the points perfectly, but you're working in that arm circle, which is a Bartemia fundamental. And when we move nicely in that joint using rotary factor as we're circling, it's a healthier system moving with our pecs, our lats, all the stuff, rotator cuff. So just feeling into that. And now we come back because pain. Tell me what you were going to say before I went on a big.
I was just liking the feel of the horizontal space, and I have like a lot of things like clicking, like the fascia or what it does, the energy, what's happening in your body, and also I know that if your body moves, the energy comes later. So if I'm moving, maybe the energy of what's happening is following after. So there are all kinds of things that's going in my mind. So it's kind of lots of things happening.
Yeah, and that's what it's like. Around us is an entire world, and within us is an entire world, and every experience we have is stored within our tissues, within our systems, within our nervous system. And when we move in these different places where we might not have spent time before, it really shifts and tones and tunes and maybe releases things that might be uncomfortable, the nervous system. So it's an interesting, when I was studying movement analysis, I went through a year-long program. I saw a therapist during that time because I was like, whoa, how do I re-find the ground with these changing ideas that are happening in my body, you know? Because now I have access to things that might have been shut off for a very good reason. Like maybe I didn't need, you know, I wasn't using certain parts of space because I was holding myself in a way that was serving me up until that point. And then you start to change that and shift it. It's like, whoa. And then one more step to what you were saying is, so right after I studied movement analysis, which was in the 90s, I studied connective tissue therapy, which was with a woman who was also a movement analyst, and she would only teach movement analysts because she wanted people that had that understanding of space. And so what I learned is that because our nervous system is routed through our fascia, our, well, it's one of the things I learned. When we shift and turn, we're really tuning the autonomic nervous system. So what connective tissue therapy does, which is working through the fascia, it really starts to balance out the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So if you're somebody who's really like, too much in the sympathetic and no action, you know, push, it'll balance you out a little bit more. So this woman, her name was Elizabeth Dickey, and she was German. She developed this whole system in like the 1950s. So, and she found that like, and it all started with moving through the fascia at the base of the spine. So through the SIS and the, that little, ilio, what's it called? SI joint, sacroiliac, there we go. Through the sacroiliac, that little triangle of space around our bottom of our spine, just below our lumbar, just above our tail, that's where like the beginning of the pulls outward and then moving up your spine. So with this movement, or with these strokes, there's certain strokes that are calming strokes that calm the nervous system, and there's certain strokes that activate the nervous system. But on a moving level, when we're moving in this space, we are moving those fascial, Tom Myers would call it fascial trains. But for me, the Tom Myers model is a little bit too mechanical. So thinking of it more as these really three-dimensional whole systems of tensegrity. Like our body is this whole system of tensegrity. So how is everybody else landing with that? Go ahead, Dawn.
I just wanted to know if you could say Elizabeth's last name again.
Dickey. It's Dicke, I think. I have her books, and I brought them back here. So she wrote 2 books, which were out of print. And when I studied movement analysis, we had to read the books. Not movement analysis, the connective tissue thing. Yeah. But it was really like an interesting, and that was like in the 90s, shifted the way that I was thinking about body and connection and how much, just how integrated it all is, and why it's important that we do maintain access or develop access to these spaces around us that are not our normal, you know, everything's in front of me. I'm driving my car, it's right here. But like, what if, like, you know, how do we feel ourselves within that bigger container of space? Yeah.
I'm laughing at Kiki's comment about let your backbone slide. Let your backbone slide and you shake it to the east and you shake it to the west. Anyway.
There was a Canadian rapper. I don't know if it was the 90s, Maestro Fresh West. His song was Let Your Backbone Slide, and he does say your sacroiliac in the song. It's quite funny. Do you remember, Laura?
No, I don't know that, but I hope that you will find it and post it up on my page because I need to see that.
I believe it's actually your neck, your back, your booty, and your crack.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, and Lindsay is demonstrating. Yeah. But that's also it. Like, here's another way of thinking. Like if we go into the gut body from tongue to tail and feeling that inner space. So let's do that. Let's go into gut body for a minute. And I'm going to do this from a seated position. You are welcome to do it standing. And we're doing it in the interest of finding the three-dimensionality of our torso. So with gut body, just thinking of the whole like digestive system, eating, everything in there, all the organs, and just letting yourself mobilize. It could be micro movement, it could be very small movement, or it could be bigger movement. You could really mobilize around. And thinking of how as one area moves, the rest of it is responding. So this is really going to create a sense of hydration because you're kind of squeezing and wringing and mobilizing, and it just adjusts what's happening inside your body, like adjusts the fluids in your body. And that includes blood, lymph, but also they're like glycoaminoglycans. And it's like the snot, which is inside of your connective tissue, inside your fascia, which when you move, it sort of reassesses. So letting yourself find that, yeah. And even thinking like being like a sea creature or an amoeba, like how is the water moving inside the amoeba? But allowing yourself, and my arms have gotten really into it, but I'm still thinking, gut body, tongue to tail, internal organs mobilizing around each other so they're not getting stuck. There's freedom and access. And then let's go one step deeper and think inside the spinal cord into the brain. So we're thinking maybe cerebral spinal fluid. That is the fluid that is supporting the brain and the nervous system. So if you hit your head, that fluid keeps your brain from like knocking too hard against hopefully, like against your inside of your head, your cranium. So thinking of that cerebrospinal fluid, which is also known as the fresh water of the body, and letting that trickle down through your spine, through your spinal cord, through your nervous system. It's bolstering and supporting you. So what we're trying to do is find this sense of internal support, internal space, letting ourselves use the sort of back space, the front space, the up, down, the diagonals, the corners, to awaken and liven and slough off that which is not serving, any of those holding patterns that are holding us back. And I think that now in a way that now we start to do this in community, dancers for people who've been into it have been doing it, but as the community reaches out, and even us, we're like satellites around the world, when we start to shift this tissue and have more space for ourselves, more space for our own compassion, more space for accepting within ourselves, for being within ourselves, we have more space for accepting and being with and around others, so that we're not in that space of othering or blaming or pointing the finger at. So just finding resource through movement, so that it's like delicious, tasty, nourishing fluidity, which basically we've come into this shape flow exploration using the idea of the gut body and then moving into the cerebral spinal fluid to find this sense of flow and connectedness. And now let's start to take from that idea, start to reach into any of the points that you can remember in any random order. So you could do this, I'm just going to stay seated so that I can stay in the frame, but finding points in the icosahedron, meaning in the planes, the horizontal plane, the vertical plane, the sagittal plane, and also finding maybe the cube, the corners, like you're in a cube, finding those poles, and finding it with that really deep, yummy, hydrated, internal squishiness that's supporting all the movement. And maybe just up, down, finding the up, down, the side, side, the forward, backward. And then one thing I also want to play with is just opening and closing. So there's crossing and then there's opening, crossing, opening. Maybe it's crossing in the back. Finding ways of crossing and opening. Could be spiraling, could be twisting. So again, we're twisting, gives us a chance to sort of wring out the tissue. And how does it feel to cross midline, to narrow in? Narrowing and widening, crossing, opening. Yeah, all those things. Beautiful. I'm on my rolly ottoman, which gives me the chance to move forward and backward. Super fun finding. Yeah, and then let's go with a little bit more of the rounded sensation. So imagine that you're in a ball, and the ball, like or it's even that Icosahedron, and letting yourself kind of paint and shape your way inside the ball. Really three-dimensional whole body movement. Space behind you, below you, around, and thinking of maybe even if your arms are getting tired, let your body paint the space. Let your torso do the work. Let your hips and spine free up. Head, tail, freedom. Could be very close and near, or it could be reaching out far and away. So going from like space to total exploration, using space, but not being locked by space. And while you're in that, maybe change your relationship to the space around you. You can drop things down, maybe use the floor, take it down different levels, like seeing how it is in different places to play with space. Opening, closing, squishing, tons of information. Different things, picking up, dropping down. Good. And let's bring it back in. So coming back. If you need to keep moving, go ahead and keep moving. What are you noticing now? What's coming up? Feel free to. I'm just looking at Lindsay and the groove. Yeah. So what stood out during that one?
What stood out for me was that when you began with the original lecture movement with the framework, I forgot exactly which one I would consider the framework, but I would just say the planes.
Mm-hmm.
I can still feel the planes kind of inside my mind or in my body, and yet I can feel the kind of the chaotic or the curves, the circles. I can feel all of them sort of together. And so the framework, I'm busy. The framework, the framework is they're merging.
Right.
It's like skeleton and then muscles and flesh. It's like creating a human being or something.
Exactly. Exactly. I have my homunculus as a basic structure, but just, you know, yeah, I hear that. That's great. That's wonderful. Anybody else want to say anything? Kiki, you've been very quiet.
I'm just absorbing. Observing. I don't really have much to say. It's all making sense symbiotically inside. So it resonates. I have nothing to say because it resonates. I get it.
Cool. Yeah. I think that sometimes when we're really in the movement place, we don't have words, right? It's not about language. But I also think that, you know, as a culture, because of this whole Descartes split, of body mind as being these separate things, not just Descartes. I mean, there's a million reasons why we try and pretend that the body and the mind are two separate things and they don't have the same, they're not one you. But when we have that split, coming into language for touch, for body, for sensation, like we're only starting to develop language for it. And I learned a new word, and it's so there's like interoception, which is the feeling of our breath, of our life force, of our hearts. We are also have our kinesthetic awareness of the kinesphere, proprioception, relationship of my hand, knowing where my leg is. If I put it down without looking at it, that's my proprioception. Or I can touch the camera with no eyes, proprioception. That's that proprioceptive. But one that I read was gravityception or graviception. And that's how we sense the water in our body connecting to the earth, right? That's how we sense our groundedness, our connection to earth. And I feel like the more sort of languages that we have for this, or the more language or the more words, because we're such a verbal people, the more it lands. And also just like touch, like, oh yeah, I touched them. Softly, gently, hard, scratchy, like how, you know, our words for sensation, our language for movement, our language has been very limited because socioception. Yeah, our language has been very limited because we've had this idea, this idea of separation, right? Of separation of the mind, separation of the body, separation of them, separation of me. That's over there, I'm here, and we're not influencing other. In the way that we're now understanding, everything is completely influencing everything else all the time. So like there's not this separation of, nobody exists alone in their vacuum. Even if they do live alone in a vacuum, they're still being affected by everything around them. Yeah, what else? Anything else to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you, when you're, after you've done this, based on what you've been sharing with us, I don't know what your age is, but you're very youthful looking. But the point is, the thing I find, I want to know, do you relate to people in this way? Like when you're walking around, do you see sometimes people as angles, or do you see them as what you study as opposed to what we normally see human beings as? Do you feel that way with them?
Right. So first answer, I am 51.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, and I studied this in my 20s. And I've been using it a lot in many different ways. So I would say that, and I remember when I was studying it, I was also working at a bar in New York City. And I could watch people at the bar and I could see in a movement level why they were not getting along. Like if they're having a fight, what's happening on the movement level, like without ever hearing a word. Like, here's a great example. There's a woman and man, they're having a fight. She's never meeting him here. She's kind of like here and here, and he's diving into her. Boom, boom, boom. And it's like, wow, this is going to be a really hard relationship because he's always, you know, attacking her kinesphere, and she can't meet it. So, and here's another one. So like they were fighting and fighting, like, just, you guys go to different rooms. Or if the dude just turned himself and had the conversation here, it would have been a different thing. But because it was like this constant, like, I'm in your space, I'm in your space, I'm in your space, and she couldn't take that or be in that space, it was like, wow, this is never going to work out. But of course it could work out. You know, that's just my thought on it. But here's another one. I was teaching with another movement analyst, another Laban person. And I'll get to you in a second, Dawn. I guess, yeah, you're just chewing space. Okay. So I was teaching with another Laban person, and I was teaching an intro to movement analysis. And at one point we were having like effort battles. And so I'm very strong, I'm very quick, and I'm very direct. Those are my things. And she is not very much in weight, not strong at all. She's kind of the exact opposite. So we go in and we're going to have this battle and effort. And I'm like, and she's like, I went, and I'm like, you know, ready to like do it. I'm going to be so strong, blah, blah, blah. And she just went, and it just broke the whole strong, grounded thing by creating this totally other, like, oh, who cares, blah, 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 silly thing. Then it was the only thing that really could have broken it. But she won. It was so funny and awesome. I was like, oh, look at this. So like, you know, so that was in effort, right? That was in those dynamics of effort. And but talking more about how I see people's bodies. Even my cat, sometimes he's like a roly-poly round ball, and sometimes he's like a rectangle to me. Like, oh, here he is, speaking of which. I've got to show you his little chest, and maybe you can see it. He's got like a cross of axis in his fur that goes like this. So it's like, there's this rectangularity to him. So I do see that. But sometimes he's also just such a ball. Then with people, like there's some bar owners that I know that are like this, they kind of big bellies, and they've got a pull into back high with their head. It's a very sort of space. Oh, kitty. But like, then, I mean, you can look at people's bodies and just say, we can't always say what that means, because culturally and familiarly, it will mean different things. But there's, so, and here's a quick one, which I talk about a lot. So this is probably repetition for you, but this is the vertical. This is, hey, this is about me, right? If I'm going in the vertical, I'm bringing your attention in to me, or my attention. Just bringing my hands up and down the middle of my body does something, right? Just try it. Just take your hands so your fingers are pointing towards you and go up and down. And see what that feels like. And now take your hands and just open out into the horizontal. What does that feel like? What is that space like? The table space, right? It's a very we place. It's a very, so we talk about in Laban that this is kind of like the gathering and scattering of information in the horizontal, like, oh, you're going to check this out. You're going to check that out. You're going to bring this in. So it's a way of disseminating information and a way of bringing in information. So through the horizontal, we sort of, it's a we, I consider this is the I, this is the we, and this is the do it, don't do it. This is action, inaction, or past and future, however you want to look at that. So, and one more thing to say, I was working on a class, and I've said this before too, and we were doing the dimensional cross of axis. And this was working with another movement analyst who knows these scales like the back of her hand. And we're going up, down, side, side, backwards, and then she'd go somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, she's not going forward. This is so weird. But at the same time in her life, she was going through a separation and a divorce that she didn't want to go through. So it was like she was skipping forward, right? I don't want to go forward. I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm going side, side, I'm going backwards, and somewhere else, because I don't want to go there. So like that's part of how these things land in your body. So that's just some answering. And then one more thing, that I had this dream when I was studying movement analysis. And the dream was that I was just a point in space and that everything was radiating out and coming in. So it was like I literally was in space, and I wasn't a person. I was just this this body that everything went out from and came back towards. And so, and it was like probably the most sort of metaphysical, spiritual dream I've ever had that I remember. But it was so much about that just sense of connection and being like a star, like a bunch of other stars, like, and how we're giving out, we're receiving, and how like just that, whatever that balance is. So having studied, doing a whole year of movement analysis completely changed my life and changed the way I think and the way that I see things. So yes, it changes it a lot, but it doesn't mean that I'm still me seeing all the stuff. And I also feel like everybody knows this stuff on some level. In some level in your human animal body, you understand this. You understand these movements. You understand these shapings. You understand them at some primal level. It's not like, oh, that's totally inconceivable stuff that doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh yeah, there's a familiarity to it. Anybody else have questions, comments, concerns, things that you're noticing?
I just wanted to say, you know, my background is completely different. I didn't get to do any academic dance. I had a software career, but these conversations are incredibly familiar from software. And some of the same, I mean, I've been in rooms where someone has said, look at how this guy's belly is forward. If we build this system this way, his belly could explode. but these are fields and it's physics and it's when I dropped into your class before, I was like, oh, we're building software over here. And also Jedi shit. Very, it's all the same though. Star Wars, Jesus, physics.
Totally.
Go to nature.
Yeah. Yeah, totally true. Which is why, like, so I had been out there shoveling snow and I wrote this thing on my feed saying, tell me, can you name an exercise that approximates shoveling snow? And I just cannot tell you how mansplained I got in that thread. Well, you really need to do this. You got to make sure you have some core strength. And well, if you want to go to the gym so that you can get stronger, I was like, I'm not asking because I need you to teach me what's going on. I'm just curious so that people think. Like, I don't ask a question because I don't know the answer most of the time. I ask a question because I want to hear other thoughts about it. So, but one of my friends who is actually super cool and is like a super trainer, but a thinker too, went and made a video about exercises that you can do. And his was actually, it covered the bases. But it was so interesting. So that's how these things are connected again, right? And I was thinking, like, there's very few functional or expressive dance things that are really relatable with just the sort of three-dimensional way that we do most, or the two-dimensional, the one-dimensional way that we do most fitness ideas. So like this just rounds it out and brings it more like, what would happen if, and we could do it to make it a little bit more fitnessy. I could take a very light weight and do a scale with that weight. What's happening now? Like, am I approximating closer to shoveling snow than anything else, right? Than any other sort of exercise. And so, I mean, I feel like this is much more holistic whole movement. And really we want both. Like, it's fun to go to the gym. It's good to sweat. It's nice to work your muscles in a certain way, but it can be a very limited thinking.
You need to protect your neck and back.
Exactly. All right, well, we've come to an hour. Anyone else, but I'm going to keep it open for a few more minutes. Anyone else want to say anything? And Peen,
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
job.
I'm just thinking from I'm studying acupuncture, and all the movements. I also see all the meridians stretch or move or energy, or I don't know. It's making a lot of thinking in my head, like what connecting with energy and channels and.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. There's one more thing that you said. Oh, a chiropractic. A lot of times in chiropractic, their models are very similar to this, the way that they're seeing energy in the body.
Yeah.
On.
Yo, thank you so much for the class. It was a great class. I loved it. I have to go. See you next time. Bye.
See you. All right. I think we've come. Anyone want to say anything quick before it's over?
Thank you so much. Amazing class. Really, really got a lot out of it. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Oh, and I am all of them. I'm uploading the video, and you can see them on my YouTube, which is Laura Victoria Ward. Yes, Phoebe, exactly. Phoebe, Teresa, Phoebe. Yeah, and next time maybe we can do some more work in the cube. Oh, here we go. This is your brain on drugs. All right. See you guys later.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming.
Bye.